Hey y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Audio Wave Network studios and is sponsored by the Ford Foundation, now a content partner to bridgedetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the east side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We drop a new episode every week, so be sure to turn on those notifications. It's been a week since the Detroit municipal elections, and we want to follow up and discuss what we saw happen on Tuesday, November 2nd in the city. Today, we will run down each of the races for you and hear about how a local group is organizing around the clock in the year to increase voter participation in Detroit. Joining us on the show today is Branden Snyder. Branden is the executive director of Detroit Action. Detroit Action is a nonprofit organization working toward building resident power in neighborhoods to increase participation in democracy, address the root causes of poverty, and spur thriving in communities. Branden, welcome back to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you, Orlando. I'm finally on here while you're here.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad to be here. And I was just saying how nice the facility is, the Marlo Stoudemire Center. And you're like, this is really, really dope. This studio is really dope. I am impressed. I can never go back to doing.
You can't go back to the ghetto. Zoom is the ghetto.
Go back to doing Zooms on the ghetto. sitting at my coffee table, just trying to keep my dog quiet and answer questions. No, I'm never going back.
Well, I'm really, really happy to have you on. I am a fan of yours. And so this is really great to sit across from you because, I, for the longest time, Don, I thought Branden didn't like me. He would come on every time I was out of town or not on the show. And I'm just like, dang, Branden must not really mess with me like that. But today he said yes.
Not at all.
And said yes quickly.
He did.
Like I got you his phone number and in minutes later you were like confirmed. And we were so excited because we wanted to talk about the election. And we had another guest and it was going to be a great guest in the future, but we were left with this opportunity to talk to somebody about the actual election today, and you were the one.
Well, I'm glad, and I'm a fan of y'all work. I am a big proponent of getting my staff to read Bridge Detroit.
Thank you.
Wow,
thank you.
My former classmate from grad school, Olivia Lewis, is one of y'all reporters.
Stop! Are you serious?
Yeah. We went. You should ask her about. We went to Senegal for a class trip.
Yeah.
So we spent a week in Senegal and. She had friends there, so we did this project. She took me around. So
she had friends in Senegal?
Yeah, she had a homegirl that was Senegalese.
Surprise me.
And,
It doesn't surprise me.
But that is the homie, and so lots and lots of time I spend looking at the write-ups that y'all do. Lots of time I get the chance to spend reading her work and your work, and seeing you on PBS and seeing all these, so I'm a fan as well.
Thank
I'm a fan
you.
as well. From one East Sider to another, I'm a fan as well.
Oh, see, he said the magic word. East Side, baby. East Side love and support.
Yeah. And here you were thinking he was not a fan.
I'm like, dang.
And they're just like, I can't believe somebody doesn't like me.
No, so it's so funny. This is hilarious. And Donna, I think you feel the same way. Donna and I are honestly shocked when people come up to us and be like, oh my God, we listen to the podcast. Because I think something in our brain tells us we only have 2 listeners. I don't know what it is, right? And then people all the time walk up to us and we are genuine. It's not fake. We're not fake humble. We are genuinely shocked. When people
the podcast has reached the episode that I was on last year. I think I was out walking my dog. I live in on the north end, and I'm walking my dog, and I saw Senator Adam Ollier, and he was like, hey, I listened to your episode of the podcast. I'm a subscriber. I'm a listener. I was like, okay,
that's
good.
crazy, right?
And then Kevin Ryan at the Ford Foundation also was like, hey, I listened to it. So y'all have a reach. This it's a place to be. So I'm excited.
Oh, we are excited to have you here because you have reach.
Yes, you do.
And we're going to get to that in a minute. I need to hear these stories because I actually wanted to just call you up and ask you. I'm reading social media and I read a story and I was like, hey, what? And I'm not trying to be nosy, but I'm really excited to hear that great things are happening with Detroit Action because you're doing the work that I've wanted to do, that I know needs to be done. And every time we have these election debates and people start having these postmortems, I keep thinking, the problem is that we're not dealing with root causes. Mm-hmm. We're not engaging a whole group of people who don't believe in politics anymore. And your job and what you've been doing from the little bit I know, and you'll tell us more, is to really make politics relevant to the people who need them most. And so I'm a fan in that respect. So we're gonna get into it,
but we want to ask you first. How is the day finding you? How are you?
The day is good. So my dog Keisha, who is like
your dog's name is Keisha?
My dog's name is Keisha. She has KHEY $HA. So she's a whole character, but so I've had her for 8 years. She's now becoming a elder dog, so she has epilepsy, and so occasionally, she's on seizure medication. She'll she may have seizures, just occasionally, but in the meantime, she does normal dog stuff of like destroying things here and there, and so I came home, to like her in her normal spot, in front of my TV this afternoon. She was watching MSNBC.
Oh my God.
I came home.
She's related to you for real.
That is the channel that we keep it on. I came home and I looked over at my coffee table and she had completely destroyed my phone charger, my computer charger, my laptop charger, and destroyed a hat, which I was like, how did you find this like baseball hat of all the things?
What did you do to make Keisha mad?
I don't know.
Did you leave her at home?
Yeah, Keisha, see, this is the thing about it is pets got spoiled. Let's be honest, okay? Right. The pandemic messed our pets up. I have a cat. Honestly, this cat.
Donna, what's your cat's name?
We have two, actually, Smokey and Dusty.
Okay.
Dusty is the outgoing cat.
Mm-hmm.
Dusty left for like 3 weeks. Dusty was mad. And we got back because we went out of town and
he
got
went
back.
On vacation.
He was like irritated. Like, you stayed gone for 3 weeks. And we had people coming in to take care of him. But we were gone. And so Dusty left. He was out.
Said,
I'm out. You can go. I can go too. I'm driving down the street and I look up and there's a little cat. I said, there's Dusty. I said, Dusty? And Dusty turned and looked at me like, And by the time I pulled in my driveway, Dusty was sitting at the front door like, I'm back. Don't do that again.
Keisha got an attitude with you. Like, you've been gone too long.
Keisha had an attitude. And so, like, we were trying to figure each other out at the beginning of the pandemic. Because, I'm, not.
So you just got her?
No, I've had her for 8 years.
Okay, all right.
But we've never had spent, like, it's
all
like
that time together.
She's like any relationship. Like, we were for real on top of each other. And, like, every day in and out during the pandemic. And so she had never spent, days and days and days with me without like me going to work. So I would be in my dining room on the phone and like, how normal dogs want to like sit next to you and cuddle.
Yeah.
And she would just go in the other room and be like, all right, look, if you're going to be talking about work, I'm just going to go ahead and do my thing.
But now that you've been actually leaving the house, Keisha's like, wait a minute, I thought we worked something out. What kind of dog is Keisha?
All right. So here's another funny thing. So, for years, I lived in Indiana for 2 years. I was doing faith-based organizing. And so I didn't really know a whole lot of people. So I got a dog. And the folks at the Indiana Humane Society were like, this is a puppy Rottweiler, And so
I love that.
So hold on. So me and my friends were like, I don't think this is a Rottweiler, but we'll see when she grows. And so over time, she grew and she was for sure not no Rottweiler.
Oh, man.
So I had for years, like, she might be a beagle, she might be a Labrador, and I've always wondered this. And
she has a black coat.
She has a black coat, black and brown. And so the thing that I've always wanted to be is like Henry Louis Gates and figure out like
they have that. They have doggy DNA stuff.
So my girlfriend got me one for Christmas last year, and Keisha ain't no Labrador, no Rottweiler, no none of that. She's 35% pit bull and like everything else sprinkled in.
Wow.
Well, that reminds me of the person who was giving away the lady who said, remember the lady said that somebody was giving away the coyotes?
Oh yeah. No.
Baby coyotes.
No, it wasn't coyotes. It was hyenas.
Hyenas. I'm sorry. She said that it was a hyena, and then it ended up being a false story. But
I was like, they giving away hyenas.
And you got a mutt.
I got a purebred mutt. A purebred mutt. Like, she is a little bit of everything. And I'm just like,
and you in love with her, but I would have been mad. Rottweilers are my favorite breed of dogs. I think that they are absolutely beautiful. They're so loving.
I thought I was getting a steal.
Yeah.
From the Indiana Humane Society, and it was not to be.
Well, she stole your heart.
She stole my heart.
She stole your heart, and that's the best part of it.
Her name, Keisha. I love it. Donna, how's this day finding you? How are you doing?
Well,
you got some great news today.
I do. My mother came home today. She is at home, and
can we get an applause for that?
Yes.
Woo! Yes. Thank the Lord.
And Branden, you would get this. She has been at this rehab center. People are very nice, and she enjoyed most of it, but they don't have MSNBC. And she's like, you know what? Where are my people at? I don't know what's going on in the world. CNN is just not the same. So you and Keisha have a shared love for MSNBC. My mother knows all of the hosts. And so I was just really happy. The most exciting part of it was I turned on the TV and she was able to watch MSNBC in her own bed.
Good, yes.
Yeah. I love it. And it's so good to see and hear the relief that's in your voice that your mom is home. I know it's been a long and tumultuous journey. Yeah.
It's a journey into a world that I think we all need to know about.
Yes.
And that is senior care. Health care for vulnerable, disabled populations, and also senior care. We don't do a great job in our nation of that. You have some people who are amazing. The people at the PACE Center in Southeast Michigan who are at the center right on McDougal are amazing. Mm-hmm. They've been wonderful to work with. They've been my partners in figuring all of this out. It hasn't gone perfectly smoothly, but they have really helped me advocate for my mother. Getting her home, and the occupational therapist from PACE was, a saint. Yeah. Honestly, the way he had the patience, and he said, they had my mother in a wheelchair. He said, I can order her one, but I don't want her to have a wheelchair. She's going to walk.
That's what I'm talking about. An advocate.
To hear from somebody who is responsible for helping her walk, she's going to walk, is the most encouraging news I've heard in over a month. So, I'm in a really good mood today, as you can tell. Really happy. How about you, Orlando?
I am doing well. Daylight saving time is upon us, and so is the change in seasons. And so I don't know if the listeners can tell, but I got a little bit of stuffiness in my nose. My sinuses are trying to drain, but I am feeling really, really good and optimistic about what's to come and what we're doing. I love doing this. This isn't work for me, so I'm always in a good mood when I come in here. It's always
me too.
Great. Yeah,
me too. My favorite thing is talking about politics is even more fun.
Oh yeah, so we get to talk about politics today. But before we talk about politics, it's time for our new segment, Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. Today's Hot Takes are public-private partnerships fueling Detroit's neighborhood comebacks. This is by Olivia Lewis from Bridge, Detroit. Donna, what say you?
Oh, this is your classmate, right? Yeah. It's a really good story. When I first read the headline, I was like, public-private partnerships, because, it really should be private-public partnerships where private entities are driving public policy. Yeah. And basically, that's what you're saying right here in this article. Yes, we're only going to invest public funds, which is interesting that we use terms like investment to describe government spending, especially when there's no return. Like, what's the return on investment? Does the government ever get money back from the so-called people they're investing in? Or do they just get to keep it and become richer and richer? Lord. But when you have private entities driving public policy, this isn't new. That's the reason why we had the redlining. That's the reason why we had banks refusing to do certain things. Our public policy said that you cannot have mixed race neighborhoods. But a lot of times the people who were defining that public policy had come directly from the private sector into the public sector to write the rules. And it all benefits a certain class of people. And so
Can I give a little bit of background before you continue?
Oh, yes.
So Deputy Secretary Adrian Totman, the Deputy HUD Secretary Adrian Totman toured Detroit last week with media visiting some of the Strategic Neighborhood Fund neighborhoods, including some neighborhoods here on the east side and Island View and the Greater Villages. And the Assistant HUD Secretary said and emphasized the importance of public-private investment and said that government can't do it alone, Donna.
Well, I mean, it's not just that, but I'm trying to find the quote where she said that if it costs increasingly more to produce housing, it will result in fewer units being produced or rising rents. That's why funding for HUD is so important. No, that's not the part I want to get to. The part I want to get to is where this HUD secretary said, we don't know. She said local leaders should know who is moving into a city and avoid overcrowded areas. She said the community's voice should be prioritized in housing discussion. She said it's the folks on the ground whose responsibility is to see what's coming, what's around the bend, what's the need. And so I'm going to ask you, Branden Snyder, because I know this is your bailiwick.
I got the quote right here. She said, if the city needs 3 and 4 and maybe 5 bedrooms, my hope is that the local leaders will see that market, and build to it. Go ahead, Donna. That was the quote. Because what we're seeing is different.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think also I saw in there, and I can't find the quote. I'm sorry. Like I said, I was just helping my mother get readjusted. I read this once, and I meant to read it again so I could pull out this specific quote, because the specific quote just reinforced this idea that the market was driving what the public investment should look like.
Yeah, if it costs increasingly more to produce housing, it will result in fewer units being produced or rising rents to make up for those additional costs. That's why funding through HUD is so important. HUD funds can be used to defray these increasing costs to a tenant while helping to keep rents low or to build more units. That is by Julie Snyder, who's the director of HRD here in the city.
And hats off to Julie. I don't blame Julie for this, but I do blame our public policy. Branden, I was asking you a question.
Yeah, I think the one thing I was going to say to that point too is that you don't see actual demand being met or being catching up to what they're advertising. So so many of our member leaders at Detroit Action talk about the need for low income housing, not just affordable housing or just decent housing stock, period. And any conversation you have, housing is the number one issue. Being able to move into a home, being able to have a home that is going to be lead free, that's going to allowing folks to move in and be safe. But yet what's being developed and what's being built are homes that are in almost luxury. Like when you look on Kercheval and East and West Village, that new development, you see so many of the things that are being targeted towards in a more affluent class. So I think that the biggest thing that comes out of that is demand doesn't match what or what's being built doesn't match what demand is from the community. And then the other thing that I guess at the heart of the story is that when we use these private public partnerships, as Donna said, government is able to sort of abdicate their place in solving the problems of today. We're essentially saying that we don't need to do it. Let philanthropy take care of it. We got it. And that never, or let these businesses take care of it. We got it. And that never actually solved it. You used a really good example about banking and around, the redlining. That was essentially what happened when government, coming out of the baby boom coming in, into its expansion into the suburbs, saying look, we can't do all this, even though we've given folks a GI Bill and a bunch of stuff. Let's let you banks take care of it. And banks were look, we want to get affluent white folks to be in here. We weren't interested.
If you allow markets to drive public policy, taking care of poor and vulnerable people is not marketable because it doesn't produce an economic return to the people who are trying to get it. You can't have that. When you built up the suburbs, when we built up public housing, you had FHA spending money to do that, and FHA making decisions that certain types of resources would be restricted to whites only people. And that's partly to benefit the developers that were behind that policy. We've had this, predatory exclusion and then predatory inclusion. Now you have, Hope 6. Hope 6 happened in the early 2000s. or actually the 1990s
Clinton,
to early 2000s. And when Hope 6 happened, we 100% funded the demolition of housing. And then we expected public-private partnerships to rebuild housing that was going to rehouse all of these people. And it didn't. It accelerated a housing crisis. And we have to invest in people. And that means that we have to use government spending to address these needs if we want to have whole cities. And until then, Detroit is not going to grow in population. It doesn't matter how many studio apartments you build downtown, because the reality is that people are moving out from neighborhoods because of an unmet need for family housing, an unmet need for neighborhood housing. For real. And it is absolute neglect. But I'll say this also. We can't say that the city is not mapping to a need that the city has identified, because the city has not agreed to even measure the need for affordable housing. There's no study anywhere produced by the city of Detroit that says this is how many people are without homes right now. The University of Michigan and other research institutions are moving in and closing the gap and saying, this is what we think the needs are. But it's not coming from the city. It's not part of official policy. It's not baked into a HUD development plan. And therefore, it's not going to be served. Instead, we get, we're subsidizing these units of housing that are not really for long-term Detroiters.
Mm-hmm. Like this Joe Louis announcement by the Sterling Group, but don't even get me there. But I think you make an important distinction and nuance. The city is always talking about affordable units and housing that they subsidize. Affordable is very different from low income.
Yeah,
and I think that we have to begin to also push that conversation. Where is the place and conversation for public housing in the city of Detroit as well as that low income? Because it's very different.
Well, the word affordable has been co-opted.
Yeah.
It's been co-opted to disguise the real intent of government, because gentrification is facilitated by so-called affordable housing investments. The reality is, again, that the amount of money it would take to build a 3-bedroom home, a 2-bedroom home. I remember when the Parker Durand project was being planned for Kercheval and Van Dyke. Mm-hmm, and we were told this is going to be deeper affordability. 50% of the units are going to serve people who are at 50% or less of the area median income. We're going to have 2 and 3 bedroom units. I remember those conversations. I remember those promises. So I reached out to the Parker Durand, which is still under construction, years after it started. And I said, hey, wait a minute, because I heard rumors that they changed direction. So I said, we're interested in renting. They said they are going to produce 9 2-bedroom home units and 84 1-bedroom units in that apartment. 9 2-bedroom units and 84 1-bedroom units.
So a family, essentially, what you are stuck with if you want to move there is a 2-bedroom or nothing else.
One of 9 2-bedroom units. Yeah. So 9 families might get served. Those may be the affordable units. Nobody knows. So I said, hey, I'm interested in pricing. How much will these cost? I haven't heard an answer yet. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they're listening to our show. Maybe we're that popular and we'll find out.
Well, no, the mayor says that families are moving. I told y'all last week, or was it the week before, I asked Mayor Duggan this question about multifamily units that in these new developments that the city is subsidizing. And Mayor Duggan contends that people with families don't want to live in multifamily housing. They're buying homes from the land bank and they're fixing them up.
That's the only choice that we have.
And the reality is the mayor is not listening to people because the mayor has never taken the time out to assess the need. What the mayor does is give you pre-populated surveys with answers that you can only choose A, B, C, D, or E. And when he did the survey of how do you want to use this funding for the ARPA funding, he didn't release all the results.
Yeah. We asked for it.
Chooses not to know.
We FOIA'd them.
It's a choice because there's too many people in the community saying this is what we're looking for. And yet, we'll get to this right now. Somehow, the choices the mayor's making, the people who are the ones leaving the city are not voting. They vote with their feet. So 70,000 people left. That's a vote.
Let's move on. Democrat Sri Tanadar says he wants to move from state house to Congress.
This is an example of people moving into Detroit.
I don't understand why this is comedy to the two of you. You guys are laughing.
This is we just talked about people moving out of the city. This is an example of people moving into Detroit.
So he came from Ann Arbor to run for his state rep seat that he has right now. He spent over $300,000 on that campaign. He was a gubernatorial candidate a few years ago and spent over $10 million of his own money on that campaign. He is now saying, and what I think is a strategic move on his part, the man ain't dumb, that he wants to run for Congress at a time where Joe Biden is getting ready to sign into law an infrastructure bill that Rashida Tlaib voted against, right? And is being taken to task, right? And so many others from the Progressive Caucus taken to task for not voting on this bipartisan, and I say that with air quotes because only 13 Republicans crossed the aisle to vote for this bipartisan infrastructure bill, right? And so you have folks within the Democratic Party who are more centered, who are more centrist, who are irritated with the likes of Rashida Tlaib or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And he makes this announcement on the heels of her coming under fire for not voting for the infrastructure bill.
That we're losing a congressional seat.
We don't know which one.
And it doesn't matter which one.
Yeah.
Because if it's the 13th district, Brenda Lawrence can run at the 13th. It does. You don't know, but you have two Congress people whose districts will probably be melded into one.
Yeah.
And I would say that despite all of this, that Rashida Tlaib remains extremely popular because she is a fighter for the people, and people know her. She shows up in the community. But even if she's not,
and ask her why she voted no,
and she can give you a very good explanation. She voted no because she believes that we had to vote for the Build Back Better bill before we did that because we have no trust in whether or not Joe Manchin and others are going to keep on moving the
environmental precautions and more social programs.
She had good reasons for it, but I don't think the challenge for Sri Thanadar is there's no argument for him other than he's a billionaire, millionaire, whatever the hell he is. There's no argument for him. He's not the best representative. I think it's silly. I don't think he's going to win. I think that him announcing that,
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think the one thing that is in his back pocket that supports his candidacy is
his
the fact
money.
That he's a millionaire.
His money,
and that's not saying that I like him. That's his crutch to say that I can run.
Didn't I say this to you the other day? I said my optimism sometimes wonders about what would happen if we completely take money out of politics. Yeah. Where would he stand?
I get that. I think he still has a lot of hurdles to overcome. I think that he does not have credibility in the streets. Yeah. I think that he has not had to campaign against somebody who has the knowledge. I think him trying to run as a moderate, we actually have moderate Democrats.
Does he have credibility, not in the streets, but within the voter electorate? And I'm asking this question only because when I asked my grandmother a few years ago who she was voting for governor, she was like, Shree, baby. And I was
so the interesting thing about Shree's race in 2018 was, if you recall, the Democratic primary, it was Gretchen Whitmer, Dr. Abdul El Sayed, and then Shree running in third. And, you can almost look at a Sri Thanadar, talking point and pull up an Abdul El Sayed, a better talking point. And so what was one of the really interesting things about Shree's campaign was that it was almost a copy and paste of both Gretchen and Governor Whitmer and Dr. El Sayed's talking points, and essentially Shree trying to move himself to the left on things that Dr. Abdul Sayed was pretty much on the left.
But y'all, I'm saying we can intellectually it. We could talk about it and analyze it because we are who we are. But I'm talking about.
I just think that, honestly, I have to go back and look at the numbers. I didn't think he really made as much noise as he thought he was going to make. So I think that there were people who supported him. I don't personally know too many people who did. I know people who supported him. I know folks who worked on that campaign. And I was going to say, he ran a
he spent a ton of his money in the city of Detroit. They were doing very old school. We're going to give everybody who show up a shirt. We're going to give people food. We're going to do everything we can to increase name ID. One time, this is a Detroit Action, this story, is that he showed up to it. We were doing member meetings at Matrix on Gratiot and 6 Mile. And he showed up to our member meeting with his full entourage. And he showed up with a box of his books, his autobiographies, T-shirts, books, autobiographies, and he was just passing them out.
And people want it. And people take it.
I get that. Listen, I'll stand corrected. I don't think that Shree has enough crossover appeal to win an entire congressional district. I think he's won the race he can win. I think that he's gotten as far as he can. I do think that it's possible that Rashida Tlaib will be challenged, but I don't think it's going to be him. Yeah. I don't think he has enough weight to really challenge for a congressional seat. He couldn't do it for the governor's seat, and I don't think he's going to do it for Congress. I think that he does have money. There's certain groups of people he can persuade like that. But when you look at the fact that the people who do vote tend to be a little bit more astute politically than those who don't.
And let's not forget that Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is a national figure. And so when we talk about money, I'm sure she's not just getting campaign funds from the voter electorate in the state of Michigan. She's a national figure and beloved by a lot of folks.
I don't need to cheerlead Rashida, and I know we are all fans of hers, and and have a lot of shared agreement on her policy platform in certain respects. But there is no way, just from me, Branden speaking, there's no way that Sharif Thanadar is going to walk in and share my values and, as you said, put the work in the street.
What do you mean, Branden? He says, my priorities in Congress would be to fight for public safety, education, equity, Medicare for all, paid family leave, lower prescription drug prices, universal basic income, clean air and water.
There's a difference between, to me, and I'll be honest with you, even in the gubernatorial race, as much as Dr. Elsay had a lot of good things to say, he had not really walked the walk. Rashida Tlaib has walked that walk, talked that talk, connected with people, supported people. She's helping people. And so what's surprising to me, and people don't understand this, people who are some of the, the pundits will talk about her, but when we have her to a community event, people absolutely love her and thank her, and they know she's fighting for them.
To the last person is gone, she will talk to everybody.
And she's as real as it can get. I think for us, another Detroit Action story. A couple of years ago, we had a shooting where one of our canvassers was killed on the doors.
Oh my gosh!
Down the street, and this happened a week before Election Day, and I'm getting calls from friends and allies. One of those calls that night was from Rashida Tlaib. And then the next morning when I'm, in our office and trying to figure out what the heck are we going to do? Are we going to run a GOTV program? She's bringing me donuts. And in the meeting with us, trying to figure out what are we going to do this election day? Can we make sure that your staff gets, therapy and support from Access? So being able to walk that walk and being able to do that sort of constituency service and being able to tie that to values and policy is a thing that our friend Sheree just does not have, and no amount of money is going to be able to combat that.
She's a Detroiter.
And the thing is that there are some of us who are still angry that Manchin and Sinema, or whatever her name is, have been able to do what they
Cinnamon
have been able to do what Sometimes you don't even want to pronounce people's names correctly. I was reading something about her, and she was just so upsetting to me.
She called her Cinnamon.
It's on Insecure with Condola. Just so we just call her whatever.
I called her Coriander. I'm like, Lawrence and Coriander. Look, y'all,
but I mean, there's people who are just angry at the fact that they have been able to hold the party hostage, to hold these bills hostage. I salute those 6 Democrats in the House who stood up and said, you know what, we're not going to roll over to you, Manchin. This is your bill, and we are not going to roll over. And she did it understanding the bill was going to pass. If the bill was really, if the dollars were on the line, who knows what her vote would have been. But the reality is sometimes you have to take a stand and say, not enough. I'm standing up for my community. The one thing you can say about her is she walks like she talks. She's a person who strongly believes things, and she never, ever compromises on that.
Yeah, I'm not mad at the vote. I thought that it was, political strategy on his part to announce at this time where she's kind of taking a lot of heat in the media for voting no.
And I'm sure there's people who are his advisors who say, oh, this is really smart.
And there are folks that are more sort of centrist, and even folks who are Rashida haters who are like, look, we will back anybody. Let's use this opportunity. But the reality is, just as Donna has mentioned, is like, I sound like a rapper, but the hood is behind her in certain respects. And so
she got the streets. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're going to move on. Listen, MSU staff files suit after termination for failing to get COVID vaccine. So I'm going to make this one really quick. So 2 former MSU employees have filed suit against Michigan State University because they were suspended and eventually terminated for not adhering to the vaccine mandate by a certain date, right? The lawsuit actually states that by threatening adverse professional and personal consequences, MSU's directive not only directly and palpably harms plaintiffs' bodily autonomy and dignity, but it forces them to endure the stress and anxiety of choosing between their employment and their health. Now, I think that there is something to consider when we talk about, all of these mandates coming out from private companies, from public universities and things of that sort. I think it's going to be interesting, though, to see this battle begin. This is actually Donna's show, too. It's not just my show, Branden. It's Donna's show. And somehow she can't figure out how to silence her devices for her own show. All right. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how these lawsuits play out in court, right? And the decisions that the court will make, the precedent, the legal precedent that it will set. She grooming me. I wish I could see her. Put the camera on Donna, JG, so the people can see her. The legal precedent that these court cases can potentially set, and what that means for the public health and safety of everybody, right? When we go into public spaces, when we go into universities, when we head into private companies, I still don't understand why, as much information as there is out there about the vaccine, why people choose to
are mad that Big Bird got a vaccine.
Well, they're available for kids now.
Mad that Big Bird got a vaccine. This is, and people say, oh, this nation has gotten crazy. Like, we did not have a Scopes monkey trial. Like, we didn't have people who are trying to teach creationism in schools and don't want to believe. I mean, part of America is this kind of, this mix of, we just have a lot of things going on in our culture and in our nation. I don't really have enough time to even think it through, but they were talking about people like QAnon, Donald Trump, they were looking for JFK to come back. Most of my life, people are waiting for Elvis to come back. What in the world?
In the streets, we looking for Tupac.
Like, he's not really dead. He's just hiding from Jada. It's like people have said that.
Oh my God! I'm hot. Oh my God.
I mean, we are superstitious. We have all of these things going on. And then we also have a medical establishment that allowed people to get addicted to these opioids by telling people they weren't addictive. And you have a whole nation that's also contending with a medical establishment that lied to them and allowed the corporatization of medicine to undermine not just health, but the lives. I mean, you think of the number of lives being lost and the children being lost. So I think that it's hard, but I think that we have so many broken pieces to our culture that we really need a cleanse. Mm-hmm. And the COVID-19 really is exposing the fault lines of that culture of people who just don't trust government, period, of people who don't trust doctors because doctors have misled them. And then you also have this far right that sometimes believes in bodily autonomy and sometimes wants to send women to prison for life unless they can prove that their child was not aborted, if they have a miscarriage. I mean, so it's not shocking to me.
It isn't. I just think that as these cases make their way through the courts, I think it's something that we all need to watch. Especially as we go about our daily lives, because I think those of us who believe in science and who believe in being safe will have to pay attention to what these courts are saying. So,
and I would say too, just as like not a court observer or a legal observer, is like the makeup of our Supreme Court and most of our federal courts don't favor the people like
Donald Trump got 3 appointments to the Supreme Court. He got 3.
It'd be very hard,
the Supreme Court, we treat the Supreme Court like it is a bunch of biblical elders, the 12 disciples. These are not your 12 disciplines. These people are the same people. I mean, look at the history of the Supreme Court decision making. That has Dred Scott decision.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the Plessy versus Ferguson decision.
Yeah.
And every other kind of decision in between. So for me, it's almost as though justice has nothing to do with the legal structure of America. Mm-hmm. America was founded in injustice. And we've had injustice ever since. And sometimes the courts get it right, and sometimes the courts don't. I think those of us who have strong sense of justice have got to fight for what's right, regardless of what the courts say, regardless of what the laws say. And I'm not saying break the law. I'm saying fight for what's right, because laws can be changed. Minds can be changed, but justice remains justice regardless of the law and the mindsets that allow injustice to prevail.
That's a great button on that conversation. That's going to wrap up Hot Takes. If you have pieces that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. So for our featured discussion this week, we are talking to Branden about the outcomes of last week's municipal elections, and we have so much to talk about. But Donna wants to ask this first question because Donna got questions.
Listen, if Detroit Action is blowing up, right?
Okay.
If what you can trust what we're reading about on social media, I'm like listening to your post, reading your post, like, ooh, and I'm waiting for the rest of the information. So can you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, so I'll just take a step back. So I am now actually the co-executive director at Detroit Action. In August, we introduced Jennifer Disla, who's my co-executive director, who's our former organizing director, who comes from 10 years of labor organizing in the Midwest at SEIU, won a campaign in Missouri, St. Louis, at Express Scripts, which is a manufacturer, and also got her start on the Justice for Janitors campaign, which is, a famed campaign in SEIU lore around making sure that janitors at many of their service properties were being unionized. So really excited to have her and be a part of the organization. But Detroit Action, we are, as I like to joke and call ourselves, we're a union for the hood. Like, our work is about building power for working class Black and brown folks here in Metro Detroit. We work on issues around jobs, housing, public education, criminal justice, and democracy. Our work is, for some folks know us as formerly as the Detroit Action Commonwealth, and some and others that's like Good Jobs Now. We realigned and relaunched ourselves, and as I like to think of it as a marriage with some of our members from both of those organizations as Detroit Action in 2019. And so our vision around the work that we do is about how do we create a Michigan where everybody has the freedom to thrive, where everybody has an opportunity to really be able to live their fullest and truest selves. And the way we do that is through, neighborhood community organizing, and civic engagement. So, I like to joke when I talk to like funders and other folks is that like, think of like an old school car, like, we in Detroit. And so like you got an old school, like Monte Carlo. And on the outside, it's real clean, and it's, you know, and so that's sort of like how we think about our organizing, is that, you know, we do a lot of the traditional stuff that you think about community organizers. You know, we do issue work, you know, committee meetings, one-to-ones, you know, the sort of like petitioning and stuff. But on the inside, we got a souped up engine. So we, you know, run a super PAC. We've got, we run a strong narrative and comms program. We've got a strong digital program that is able to like reach people wherever they are, both literally and figuratively. We do a lot of cultural organizing, which allows us to engage folks using the arts and activism, and a lot of things that's really designed to meet people in the particular moment. And so like the theory of change behind that is that like we want to be able to be a vehicle or a political home that allows anybody to come in and really be able to you know, a place where they can grow, develop their political voice, in this political home, and be able to create a better, you know, Detroit for all, and a better Michigan for all of us.
Okay, so the news.
Are we breaking news on there?
No, I mean, I thought that there was a significant growth in your budget.
So
break the news.
So let's see, which piece of my
no. Well, I mean, this is good news. So we're all in nonprofit spaces, and it matters.
So we are. I guess the piece that you know, we should talk about a budget is like, you know, so we've started out, you know, I've been the ED of our iterations for the last 4.5, almost 5 years. You know, we've been able to grow our budget, you know, as a you know, as an organization. When I started in 2016, we had like less than $70,000 in the bank. You know, last year during the elections, between our C3, our 501c3, our 501c4, and our super PAC, you know, we had close to $6 million that we were able to run.
Can we get an applause button there?
I wasn't ready.
I told you.
You know,
this is big news. You know, I'm so excited about that.
And you know, this year we were able to run. You know, elections ebb and flow around how our money is. So this year we were able to run a political program with you know, for the elections out of our super PAC. You know, we're about like $500,000. So like we think about
just flippantly say, you got a real case of MNS. Trevian Shorter says, get rid of the modest Negro syndrome. Right. I mean, geez.
Exactly.
So, but I think like what I try to like steer away from is that, like, you know, we're a nonprofit space, so you know it's hard. Every dollar is hard earned, and so I think
you better know
you've earned it, and nobody's questioning that. But the fact is that you got it, and I think that gives people hope.
Yeah,
that doing the right thing, fighting for the right people, can, you know, that you can generate support for that.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that, like, you know, last year, you know, all of our dollars come from, you know, philanthropy, labor, and individual donors. But last year, coming out of the, you know, the pandemic, we had about 682 individual donors. That's people who legit gave, you know, anywhere from $1 up to $1,000, you know, to our organization, because they believed in, like, you know, how do we reshape democracy in our state is through the voices of Black and
that's the
folks.
Support. Like that's the system, man. Congrats. Yes. How can people plug in before we move on to the election stuff?
So the easiest way is to plug in. We are on all the social medias. It's the most vibrant as where we are on the social medias. So you can follow us on Facebook at Detroit Action Organizing, on Instagram and Twitter, as well as TikTok at Detroit_action. And then on our website at DetroitAction.org.
Now, where's your office?
So we are right next to the Packard plant, you know, in that space on 1600.
Ooh, there was some news about the Packard plant last week. We didn't do that in hot takes, but I remember Fernando Palazuela.
Yeah. So our office, 1600 East Grand Boulevard. We do meetings. We do a number of different things out of there. They actually,
I love that you're on the east side.
Yeah, they were actually the folks who owned the Packard plant were actually evicted, and so we took up another one of their offices in the building. So
awesome,
great, I love it. All right, so let's talk about voter turnout. I cannot say voter sometimes. Detroit saw a turnout of a little over 18%. There are some who contend that out of 637,000 residents per the last census count that is being challenged by the mayor and Congresswoman Tlaib, that having over 500,000 registered voters in Detroit just isn't possible. What say you guys? And is Detroit Action working to get to the bottom of this?
So we haven't fought around this. The one thing I will say, and I saw a post that Donna made around, like, it's not possible to have 500,000 voters in the city of Detroit, because that would mean like every man, woman, and child would be, would be registered to vote. So I think that there are some challenges around like how we have, goes back to data and our clerk and all these things. Like how are we counting folks? How are we making sure that we have, an accurate number of who still lives in Detroit? And whatnot, because it just doesn't make sense. And I think the numbers probably really, on the city's website report, it says it's like 18% turnout, probably like closer to 12.
You think it's lower?
Yeah, I think it's probably like 12.
If we purge the rolls,
I think it would go up.
I think it would go up.
Yeah, higher turn. Yeah, you're right.
I think it would go up. Here's what I think. I think that every adult in Detroit is not registered to vote. Okay. We wouldn't have voter registration drives if every adult in Detroit was registered to vote. We have fewer than 500,000 adults in Detroit. And one of the things is there are rules. Like if someone dies, you can't just knock them off the rolls. There's a process you have to go through. If somebody moves away, there's a process you have to go through. And Detroit has lost more population than most other cities in the nation, which means that Detroit's rolls are probably more inflated than most other cities in our community. Correct. And so if I looked at it and I said, what if you had like 60% of, say, 475,000 votes or something like that, and the number of real voters is closer to, say, 350,000. Now we're talking about somewhere between 24 and 30%. And that's in line with what's happening
other big cities,
with even the suburbs. Yeah. So when people do that, it tends to suggest that Black voters in Detroit are irresponsible. And do I want more people coming out to vote? Absolutely. Do I believe that there's people who need to be engaged or disengaged? Yes. But I think the narrative I keep hearing from all of these pundits is, why aren't Detroiters voting? Why aren't people anywhere voting? Because people have lost faith in elections, in democracy, and it shows up in our community. But the fact that we can't get a handle on how many voters we have here really speaks to something that is a data problem. And then, I'm not certain that we have a data whiz in the clerk's office.
And if Kat Stafford were here, she would say, ask the Detroiter. Like, ask the person. I mean, we who have platform, we sit around and we talk and we guess and we convey messages that we hear. Yeah. But let's hear firsthand from the person who made a choice not to vote. We sent out a poll. Bridge Detroit sent out a poll ahead of the election about election preparedness. And more than half of the people that responded to our poll, half of them, 50%, said that they do not plan on voting in this election. That means that they knew that an election was coming and they made a conscious decision not to vote. Right. How are we having conversation with that population? But since we're talking about voter turnout, let's talk about the clerk's race really quick, because one of the main offices responsible for turnout, voter engagement, and experience is the clerk's office. Denzel McCampbell challenged incumbent Janice Winfrey for the clerk seat. Denzel came up short by 38,000 votes. There was no forum. There was no debate really for that race. What happened? And what is happening?
Well, so two things. One, to your original point, to the point Donna was just making, is that we can and we should be turning out and mobilizing every man and woman, not the children, to go vote. Like, we have all of the tools for good governance in place around automatic voter registration, around same day voter registration, around no reason absentee. These are things that other states dream about. I can go to the city clerks, or I can go to my polling place on election day, or to a satellite office and register to vote that day.
That's right.
And so these are things that are tools that are good governance strategies. The problem is that we have a lack of will in advertising and using these tools to scale. So like and that problem rests squarely at the city clerk's office. And so, and we talk about election preparedness, that's a problem of the city clerk's office. And I think like one of the challenges that we think about when we hear stats like the one you just mentioned, and like through our conversations, is so many people didn't even realize that we have elections every single year in the state of Michigan. And so that is a problem of being able to make sure that we have an office of the clerk that is being prepared, as being active, and being almost an activist to make sure that people are aware of the tools that they can use. And I think that the challenge that we run into with Denzel and with others like Garland, I was on Garland's campaign in 2017, and the problems that we run into is that it's hard to beat an incumbent. Like if you in that seat, you almost got to, pry you out of it. But then the other challenge is that, until we make the argument to actually train and develop and have conversations with folks around what they want to see their elected officials do and what that person's responsible for, and connect that to values and to actual things that we want to get out of it, people aren't going to be mobilized. You talk to a person, they're like, why do I need to bother in this election? Well, until you make it plain and simple, until you connect it to what they care about, it's hard.
But it's hard to connect it to what they care about. And we had a mayor's race, and neither candidate was really talking about housing people who are homeless. Neither candidate was really putting forth a specific detailed plan for here's how I'm going to do it. If I'm living in squalor, if I'm living in a home, what's 38,000 homes, according to one U of M study, are dangerously in dangerous disrepair, and I'm living here, what is my my enthusiasm? What is my loyalty? What is my sense of connectedness to Detroit? I'm just trying to get by.
Yep.
When you vote, that's a statement of optimism that I'm going to do something to either change my condition or hold on to my condition. We have a whole lot of people who have no hope. And what we do is we beat up on them, and we think, okay, if we just tell them more about how the system works, the system is not working for them. Yeah. We had $600,000 in overtaxation, but nobody came up with a specific plan and said, here's how we're going to deal with it. And if they did, it was not shared. The other thing is people were campaigning this past season.
People were not campaigning.
Well, there were people who called themselves campaigning, okay? They would go to a barber shop and they talk here, but people are not really congregating for public meetings of that type the way that they wouldn't during a normal election cycle because of COVID-19. And so you have people speaking in echo chambers, okay? Denzel's echo chamber loves Denzel. Yeah. But outside of his echo chamber, nobody even knew who he was. How do we transcend our group of people who love us? What you saw was at the city council level, which was a level where people were in a more localized race. You saw a lot of activism and a lot of change at that level. And even so I think that it's helpful for us to think through, how do we penetrate hopelessness? How do we raise up a sense of understanding that if you vote for me, this is what I'm going to do for you?
Yeah. Well, one way that we talk about it at Detroit Action is like, the actual flip on that is that we're not talking about, we are talking about the system is broken and the fact that it's not just you that's feeling it, that it's all of us, and that we band together and we solve it, by coming together, building community, and actually making demands and holding folks accountable. Last year, we did a focus group with this group called Hit Strategies, which is like a premier organization that does voter polling of communities of color, And one of the things that they talked about when we did our focus group of Black Detroiters, so we, Black women over 40, Black men over 40, Black women and men under 40, is that people want to see somebody hold folks accountable. People want to see someone hold elected officials accountable. People want to actually be able to challenge that, and people want to actually see politicians deliver. And that's one of the things that when you hear folks and you talk, and some folks that are elected, it just doesn't happen. And for us, when we think about like our method and our theory of change, it really goes back to, if I'm living in squalor, if I'm living in homelessness, how do I get you in front of the mirror so that way he feels you and has to look you in your eye and says, this is what I'm going to do about it. This is the policy, not the nuance of, yes, I believe in housing justice, but this is the nuanced housing policy that you just said and your crew just said that we're going to work on and deliver. And if you don't, then this same person that I'm looking in the eye is going to show up to your office and it's going to be 30 of us next time. So that's our sort of theory of change, is actually turning that frustration into anger, and turning that into activism.
Well, I think that's important. Absolutely. I also think it's important to have candidates who are running for office on those things, because what you get is you get the people plan.
Yep.
And you don't even use S's anymore. The people plan. That's a pet peeve of mine. I'm sorry. Why not the people's plan? The people plan. You get,
and that's so weird in a place like Detroit, because we love the letter S.
I don't get it, but it almost felt like
Myers,
you were
Kroger's, Target's.
So, yes. Exactly. I throw an S at Myers, okay?
Everything.
Come on now. So maybe that's the reason I'm missing the S in the people's plan, but I think it's a possessive S. I don't know what it is, but every time I hear it, but you get that. You get pandering, okay? You get somebody saying, okay, we're going to spend $30 million on fixing up homes and the Renew Housing Plan. And that sounds like a plan because people don't know what $30 million is, and that sounds like a lot of money to somebody who doesn't have $3,000, right? But the reality is it's not. And so I think, I think we need candidates. Mm-hmm. We need really strong candidates who are going to make it plain, make it simple, and make it clear. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to do it. This is where I'm going to find the money, and you can trust me. Yeah. And I think if we had candidates to do that, because it has to start at the top of the race, a clerk is really hard position to get people motivated for. You almost have to be running against a clerk.
It's wonky. It's like, who knows what their clerk does? Who knows who their clerk is? What is their, what is your clerk responsible for? And that's one of the challenges, no doubt.
But what you saw with the city council elections is you saw people saying, I want the mayor held accountable.
Well, let's talk about that. If I can try to facilitate this conversation, let's break down the mayor's race. So we had a conversation about trying to increase voter turnout. Let's talk about the voter electorate in the city of Detroit. Mayor Duggan cruised into victory, obtaining over 69,000 votes, and challenger former Deputy Mayor Anthony Adams grabbed 22,000 votes. What does this say about the Detroit electorate and their affinity, if you will, if we can call it that, for Mike Duggan? Like, he's popular with the electorate.
I don't know if he's popular.
Okay.
I believe that people believe he's competent. Mm-hmm. And I think that people have lived through incompetent governance in the city of Detroit. Mm-hmm. I think people believe that he can keep Detroit out of bankruptcy. I think people believe he can keep Detroit out of emergency management. And so competence becomes the biggest thing that you want from your mayor. And I think that if you're going to challenge him, you've got to demonstrate that you are equally competent and you have good ideas. I think that you cannot have a laundry list worth of things that you're going to do. I think that you have to be very focused in what your campaign is saying it's going to do, and you've got to hit a nerve. And quite frankly, I think his opponent's campaign came up short.
Yeah, I really agree. And I think the one challenge that I have with the Adams campaign, so it's really hard to run a race. You don't want to dog on people the week afterward. But the real challenge that I have is that, you have to be in it. You have to be able to, if you know that your opponent is going to be raising, tons and tons of dollars, you got to be able to come up either comparative or you got to bring the people power. And we didn't see either with that either. And I think when you look at like the spending, you look at like some, campaign strategies I didn't necessarily agree with, like on like not using digital, not spending a lot on digital, not using,
I went through the campaign finance reports for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I have to be honest with you. My money would have been on a social media campaign that generated funds and that went viral. Okay. I would have messages that got to people, but I saw spending on billboards, and I don't recall having seen a single billboard. So I'm like, maybe I was just driving to the wrong communities. Did you see a billboard?
I saw billboards in February. And like for folks that run like races, that like in February, or anybody, that February, nobody's paying attention to the election. Nobody's looking at the election. People aren't even thinking about, only thing people are thinking about summer is, when they're going on vacation in November, what they're going to be thinking about for Thanksgiving. And so to spend on, and this is, to spend on billboards just, goes back to the question that or the point you were just making, Orlando, is like, are you in touch with the actual electorate and like what and how they get their information and where they get their information? We spent We spent about $12,000. You know, you can look it up on the Secretary of State on our super PAC, and we spent that money on like ads for Nicole Smalls on using Hulu and YouTube, and we that's crazy. And we know that because I saw one, and we know that we got close to like 1.3 million impressions, and so more money and spending more money smartly is how you win, especially in the pandemic.
So can I add this bit of nuance, Donna? Yeah. Like I was looking at some polls and I was looking at some national trends, and this trend I think is true also for Detroit, that people who vote, especially in the municipal elections, tend to be more secure, more optimistic, and more upwardly mobile, more educated. Mm-hmm. And I think the voter electorate in the city of Detroit sort of looks like that. Is Duggan how is Duggan resonating with the electorate that Anthony couldn't get? Like, what is he saying that Anthony couldn't say?
Well, I mean, again, he's the incumbent. Mm-hmm. If you're living in one of the strategic neighborhoods,
you're happy.
Your property value, if you own a home, and you're more likely to vote. Your property values have gone up. You got street lights, and they're picking up your garbage on time, and all of those basic things. Your commercial strips may look better. And so if the argument is, wait a minute, you've got to spend in other places, then you've got to figure out how to pull out voters from other places, okay? Because those people are fat and happy, okay? This is when you have a whole strategic neighborhood focus for your campaign, and you say, I'm going to invest in 10 neighborhoods. It's kind of smart because those may be where most of your voting public lives. And so they're seeing and realizing the benefit of what your investment. Now you've got somebody else coming in. Now, how do I know this guy is not going to stop that? I mean, people complained about Livernois until Livernois was done. And now all of the shop owners on Livernois love what happened on Livernois. If you live in Sherwood Forest, you probably like it. If you live in the Bagley community, you probably like it. University District. So you have to think through how to win over those people. I think maybe you can't. But I think that there's ways that you can, because there's fault lines in anybody's campaign, but you've got to figure out what that is. And the first thing you've got to do is reassure all of those people who think I'm doing better as a result of this mayor, that you will not abandon them when you're in office, but you have no message for them. You have no nothing. If I can get more likes on a post I do on Facebook than somebody running for mayor, we got a problem here, because I'm moderately well liked, but I'm not Eric Thomas well liked. You know what I mean? I'm not. People. Oh, I really like what you say, but Eric Thomas goes viral. I mean, the mayor has Eric Thomas on his team, but there's other people he could have put on his team. Who was his campaign strategist? Now, I'm not trying to be mean, but here's the thing, and why I get so passionate about it, because somebody could look at this and say, you know what? Mayor Duggan is inevitable. He can have this seat as long as he wants it. Nobody can take him on. And my thing is, you can, but you have to take him on. Be smart if you're going to try. And what I didn't see was smart in terms of campaign. Now, he's a very intelligent man.
Who's on the bench? Who's building the bench?
So to both of those questions is like, how do you penetrate the noise? How are you actually like having conversations that actually penetrate the noise? And, what I was told by somebody a couple of years ago is that the average voter thinks about, and so all of us in this room are probably listening to this are not the average voter. So but the average voter is thinking about elections for 7 hours cumulatively in total as they're getting ready for their election. That's cumulative throughout the year. And so how do you penetrate the noise to make sure that you're telling a story that resonates, that you're having a narrative that resonates with them, and that you're actually connecting to like what you were saying, Donna, just a moment ago about like that you're making smart policy decisions that actually reflect in people's lives, especially in a municipal race where you can point to, oh, hey, my trash isn't getting picked up, or oh, hey, my lights aren't getting on, and I'm a person.
Am I allowed to talk about Angela Callaway yet?
Well, let's go there. Let's go there. Let's head over to District 2, where Angela Callaway upset incumbent Roy McAllister by obtaining almost 2,000 more votes than Councilman McAllister. Residents in that district have spoken. Donna, what are you contributing that to?
I mean, she had a natural constituency. She's well liked. She's well connected. She came in, she was smart. And what she was able to do was convince people she was going to do something very different. She had beautiful campaign materials and she had a message.
And I'm also heard from residents in District 2 who are like,
I've been hearing about that for like 3 years where people are like, who's going to run over there?
What'd you say?
People have been saying for years of like, who's going to run against Roman Catholic?
Well, you know, I heard some people say they were surprised he didn't make it. I wasn't surprised. Yeah. But I think that the reality is that he voted with the mayor more often than not. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that tells me if you're widely popular, where are your coach strings? Why are the people who vote with you the people who lost? Yeah. And the people who came in are people who are believed to be people who would challenge you for the most part. I think there is a popularity. I think that there is a certain amount of respect that he is probably owed in terms of his competence and his ability to make the trains run on time. But I think in terms of policy decisions, what people wanted from their council people this time was somebody who was going to stand up and have an independent voice. And Angela Callaway is one who did, but she's also someone who had a natural network. If you're planning on running for any type of high office in the city of Detroit, there's things you have to convince people of. And quite frankly, and I don't mean this in any kind of way, but you spent all of this money on Hulu and you got all those impressions and your candidate came in.
Well, yeah.
Let's talk about the at-large city council race. The main contenders in that race were incumbent Janae Ayers, Nicole Small, Mary Waters, and Coleman A. Young Jr. Coleman Young and Mary Waters were the top vote getters, edging out incumbent Janae Ayers. Was this an upset?
Of course.
Mary Waters, yes. Mary, yes. But I was
that Mary Waters pulled out.
Yes. Mary Waters
and beat Janae or beat Nicole.
Beat Janae.
Okay.
Janae. We knew she could beat Nicole after the primary. That she was expected, I think, to beat Nicole based on the primary results. Janae, not so much. But Nicole was a public official, well known and very well liked in some quarters. And she had a lot of support from grassroots activists. And yet she came in not a close fourth. What happened?
So because of just a quick primer and campaign finance, we don't coordinate with the candidate as a super PAC or a C4. So
I understand that.
So I haven't done an autopsy of their campaign or what looks like on the inside, but I would say for us, social media and these things aren't foolproof. They do rely on, folks engaging on the back end, folks building the sort of constituency that you're talking about, the coalition of the willing, and also, raising money and doing all the sort of mechanics, the fundamentals. I think for for the Mary Waters, contingent, is sort of the example that you gave with Angela Callaway is that built-in constituency, people people have a name, have a name, familiarity with them as being a progressive in the community from years past. And, Coleman has, 100% name ID in the city of Detroit. There's no way in the world that there's someone who hasn't heard the name. So I think that you have to assume going into a citywide race that he's the front runner. And then you have to assume that everybody's fighting for second. And with Mary Waters, being an activist, having that built-in name, having that built-in network, it was, much more and stronger than what Nicole had and what she was building. I think that she's a candidate that people like and has lots and lots of grassroots activism cred, but I think that in comparing the two, was essentially very similar candidates, very similar bases, and it gave out.
Can I ask you a question though?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've also heard people who don't like her, who feel as though she can be belligerent, and that during the charter commission, she could be kind of loud. She could be, and so if you're on her side, you love it.
Yeah.
But if you're not on her side,
or trying to make a decision,
you're trying to make a decision. There's people, I think, sometimes who wonder whether or not you would have a return of some of the Monica Conyers, name calling, stuff like that. I heard that from some people. And so, although there are many people who thought really highly of her, I think there were some people who questioned her leadership temperament. Did you ever hear anything like that?
I'll preface this and say that, I've been cussed out on Facebook by her, so I joke, but I
think we all have.
We all have
at one point or another.
But being serious, for a second too, is our members who endorsed her looked at her and respected the fact that she was stand up and fight for them and fight, and stand up against billionaires. And she was the person in the citywide slate who had a clear
agenda,
clear agenda, and clear corporate accountability agenda. And so a lot of folks stood up and wanted to support her because of that clearness and crispness of what the agenda was. And I think that all of those sort of personality things is, it's unfortunate because, at the end of the day,
does the super PAC think about that? Does the super PAC think about likability and temperament and when putting money and resources behind a candidate? And is that something that, campaigns think about?
So our program really was about who would deliver for us on issues, all the personality, all of the, some people, I don't like Cloman because his mama's in the room, all this type of stuff is not useful because at the end of the day, it's who will deliver for us.
Right.
But is it a political reality though, that we can't ignore that, people want to like it's a reality. People want to like the person that they're voting for. They want a temperament that is productive. You know what I mean?
I think there is that's a reality that happens. I think going back to Donna and your point though, is people are voting for Mayor Duggan. They may not even like him. They're just look, he's competent. Right. He'll do what we ask.
But the question is, can you deliver? Right. So if you're a city council, you're one of 9. Mm-hmm. The only way for you to deliver is to get the other folks on city council to vote with you.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a question about city council getting quagmired in the same way that you saw the charter commission getting quagmired, where it felt like nothing got done for a while. And then what did get done didn't pass.
Yeah.
And I think, it lost badly. And I think that, I was watching, Let It Rip? And she was on there with Sheila Cockrell. And it got really fiery. And so some people who supported her were like, oh, she let Sheila Cockrell have it. And people who were neutral was like, oh my goodness, is that the way you conduct yourself on TV? And so I don't think it's personality.
Whatever, Sheila Cockrell.
You know how I feel about it.
No, I'm just saying. That's also not
social media. And what I'm talking about is the mindset of voters.
Yeah. So let's also add the nuance that Black women can't get loud. Yeah. They can't get boisterous. They can't be.
I know. But I mean, she was. But when you looked at it, was her and Carol Weaver.
Yeah.
It was all of that. And so Carol Weaver's also a Black woman. And I think that the question that people had was whether or not this is a productive leadership quality. And I think you're right. There is a double standard when women do it. But I think even when a man does it, you have to say, can I get something done? And I think, and listen, I voted for Nicole. So this is me saying this. I voted for her. I'm trying to peel back the onion and say, why did some people not? And this is what I've heard.
Yeah.
And so it's not a personality thing. It is a leadership behavior thing, and it can be changed. But I think that what people saw was some people, and was something that did not necessarily reflect her ability or her skill set.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I would just say too is that we got a firewall. So legally, I don't know what's going on in the campaign. I'm not super close. I know Nicole, so I'm not, having conversations about what's going on in their race. But what I will say is that this is the big point I want to make is when you look across the board at, the final turnout tally from the Anthony Adams election, the mayor's race. You look at the total from the Denzel's race and then Nicole's, it's roughly about the same. Statistically significant and roughly about the same number of turnout voters for each. And so we've got a little bubble, a population of folks who are fired up and who support that type of candidate or who want change, across the board. And what it means for organizations like ours, for other political organizations thinking about how do you build a progressive bloc is how do you actually bring those folks that you're talking about who, may not have supported Nicole, but may believe in some of the corporate accountability work or may not support Janice Winfrey, but, want to see more civic engagement. How do you, how do you bring more of those folks on? And I think part of that work is at the end of the day, that it's not what the candidate can do. It's what, organizations like ours that step in that gap have to be able to do is you have to create and sort of cobble together a voting block, because the candidate can only do so much. The candidate has to carry the water, but we have to sort of like set and try to set the narrative and like reshape the terms of like what we are. What's the debate?
I'm going to try to move us forward.
Let me just say this quickly.
Okay.
Look at Coleman. Coleman lost badly to Duggan a couple of years ago, right? And then he came back and he polished his message. He polished himself and he reintroduced himself to voters. It is not just name recognition. He ran a smart campaign. When he came to Authentically Detroit last time, he was very smart. Last week, he was very smart. What he had to say was right on message. I think that really what needs to happen for a candidate like a Nicole, like a Denzel, and if Anthony Adams probably is not the person for mayor, and I only say that because I think it needs to be a younger person. I'll be honest with you. I think one of the issues is we need a fresh face running for mayor. But I think that reintroduce yourself so that you can move away from the caricature and people can get to know your heart and get to know who you are. If people have only seen you in one way and these battles have been taking place on social media, let people know you the other way. And so we have between now and the next election cycle to build those relationships. We talked about Rashida Tlaib, who's a fighter, but she's on the ground and people know her. She didn't introduce herself to people during a pandemic. She didn't run during a pandemic. If she ran, maybe it would be the caricatures about her that people were criticizing, because when she has cursed, people have criticized her for some of what she's done, but people also know her heart. I think with progressive candidates, we just need to do more outreach above and beyond where we normally are. And I also think you can't lead with your anger. I think you have to lead with your vision. This is where I think we need to be. Accountability is definitely something, but people also need to know what a Detroit you would create looks like. And I want to see that from all of the candidates who I think have so much promise and who somehow did not cross over this time.
We got to move us on because we are running way long.
Okay.
Really quick, let's talk about District 4 and then let's round it out around, a discussion around what the balance, the check and balance of government in Detroit will look like with this new progressive leaning city council and our more centrist mayor. But District 4, Letitia Johnson was the top vote getter over former Free Press and Fox 2 reporter M.L. Elric. This, in our minds, Donna Givens-Davison, was the race to watch.
I mean, Letitia has been doing the work. She's a volunteer. She's shown up. She's a really nice, approachable person. She's smart. She has a great deal of vision for what she wants to see happen, and people know her. M.L. Elric actually ran a smart campaign. He outperformed what people thought he would do, certainly what I thought he would do. He did run a smart campaign, but the reality is that you cannot run a campaign that outperforms knowing somebody like Letitia. And also he has a track record and he has baggage that he will never get beyond with some people. Yep. I think also that there were times that some of his surrogates would come out there and be in the community saying and doing things that did not necessarily reflect well on him. Everybody has surrogates, but I think I've heard some things. But I think ultimately Letitia won this. He didn't lose it. She won because she is the right candidate for this moment, and she has been working at this for a long time. And I'm also going to point this out. Letitia, this is not her first time at the rodeo either.
She's lost a few
times, and she learned how to win. And that's what I say about a lot of candidates who have it. When she lost, and I'm not saying this was her strategy, she licked her wounds. She went back serving the community and continued to build relationships so that when she ran again, she had been connected to people all over District 4. And I think, so hats off to Letitia. She made us proud.
Yeah, well, we endorsed Letitia, and I think one of the things that we thought was really important from her campaign was her willingness to, you brought this up earlier about like housing and like being really crisp on like, here's how we fight back and work on housing. So we're part of the Professor Bernadette Etehune's coalition against illegal tax foreclosures, and she was one of the first people to sign our commitment to find a way, find policies to pay back folks who've been overassessed. When we talked about property tax foreclosure, we talked about rental assistance, which is another key issue around our membership base, and like how do we make sure people are able to stay in their homes if they're not homeowners but renters. She was really clear and really crisp about what does it look like to make sure that we have policies like right to counsel and that we are investing in more affordable and low income housing. And so I think, going back to your point, I think that vision and anger, are hand in hand. It is a very much of the sort of like way I've been taught organizing, but she was very crisp to offer the sort of perspective that you're arguing is like, nope, here's our hopeful, promising vision of how we get through to and build a better District 4 and build a better Detroit. And I think that for a number of voters, that was inspiring. And I think at the end of the day, whether it's anger, cold anger, whether it's whatever, is that you have to inspire voters for them to see the best of Detroit or what they want to see for their communities. And
well, yeah, Donna, you talked about piercing hopelessness, and I think one of the ways you can pierce hopelessness is giving people hope.
Right.
And hope comes with a vision, and it comes with optimism, and it comes with that crisp and clear message. And some people got it.
Yeah.
Some people caught it.
You want to be inspired, right? Because a person who is a fragile voter, a person who is an infrequent voter, when they hear all of the negatives, when they hear all of the anger, they may just give up and say, I'm not going. If you want them to come to the polls, you have to believe there's a reason to come and not remind them of all the reasons why they hate politics. And I think that Letitia's one who got it. I actually think that we have some good candidates. Like I said, I think that Coleman has it. I'm optimistic about this. I was listening to Charlie Beckham was on.
Really?
Detroit is different, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to him and he said, city council only does one thing. They pass ordinances and they approve budgets, but they don't do anything else. And I thought he really does not understand the role of city council. Well, he served mayors for so many years.
Oh, come on, Mr. Beckham. That's disappointing.
But
come on.
He served mayors for so many years. He also had lots of wonderful things to say about the press. But he served mayors for so many years that, because I think that, there's people who really get angry about political accountability. And when you've been in these positions of high power, sometimes accountability looks like people are prying.
Yep.
And the reality is that somebody's supposed to be looking at what you're doing. But I think when he said that, he doesn't understand, or maybe he does, that city council members are supposed to approve contracts. They are supposed to control spending in so many ways.
And appointments.
Yeah. It's a check and balance.
It's a check and balance.
So what does that look like now?
I think when they're doing their job, I think that we have 6 intelligent, seasoned people, even if they're not seasoned. Well, maybe not 6 intelligent, seasoned people, but, a good number of seasoned, intelligent people. I can't say 6 because I can't vouch for all of them. There's some I don't know. I don't want to, no shade. I just don't know everybody. But the ones I know are seasoned and intelligent people. They have support from people who know things, and they are connected to the communities they serve, and they will not be a rubber stamp for this mayor. And that's what we really need. If you're not going to change mayor, you're going to have to stop rubber stamping everything he does. We've had a number of decisions that seem to have gone through with no scrutiny, whether it's the ARPA dollars. And actually, Nicole gave a very good explanation for what's wrong with that. The ARPA dollars
was great on last week's show. She was amazing.
Really was. Yeah. She really was. And when she talked about those ARPA dollars, I think that you have to look at that. I think that you have to look at the contracts for demolitions that are just flying through. Even when Brenda Jones talked about the law department and the fact that the Corporation Counsel Garcia has been, that the Inspector General's office,
that's in the news too. So much news.
The legal whatever for I can't think of the legal entity that controls attorneys. The Michigan Bar.
The Bar Association?
Well, I think it's the Michigan Bar. Okay. She referred him for sanctions because she said that he is interfering with her right to do her job. Brenda Jones has been looking at that on her way out of office. She has been pointing out a few flaws. And so I think this city council has a lot of threads to pick up on and to bring about accountability. And I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think the one really thing, hopeful thing that comes out of our new city council is, there's going to be a lot of wrangling, on, and battles on like what this city council's makeup looks like and how that, we have an opportunity for this leadership to really exert itself. So how do we make sure that leadership exerts itself? One thing to your
and point, a little bit of a learning curve.
And a learning curve. And I think one thing that's important when we think about like how to make sure that this new incoming city council isn't a rubber stamp for the mayor's agenda, is also making sure that it is also not a rubber stamp for the corporate agenda as well. And I think that when we look at like, you know, our you know, one of the things that I think for us at Detroit Action that we're really concerned about is that, you know, the top money raiser for this year's election was Scott Benson, who ran unopposed, and he was the top candidate for corporations. And, you know,
he's very development friendly, very corporate friendly.
But everybody knows him.
And everybody knows that.
Everybody knows him.
And everybody knows him.
And Mary Sheffield is also there.
And I think that, like, you know, he raised 225,000. You know, next in line was Gabby Santiago Herrera with 100K or something. And so for us at Detroit Action, like, it's how do you make sure that our corporate agenda isn't also just getting a rubber stamp? And that is one of the key things that we think about, like the mayor's agenda, the corporate agenda, making sure that it's actually a people agenda.
Thank you.
And that
people's
and that they're able to, you know, exert their voice in the city council. So it's going to be a steep learning curve. You know, communities have to do the work, and we have to, you know, be able to make sure we're pushing, exerting, and holding accountable to make sure these people do what they said they were going to do.
Yeah, people are going to look at.
There's going to be a learning curve. I think that, you know, sure, there's going to be a learning curve. Sure. But I think that the people we've identified are more than capable.
They're very capable.
And many of them have been studying this, and they have people who are going to be able to train them and prepare them for this. Mary Sheffield is also in city council, and now she has a friendly city council to work with her on a lot of the issues she could not move forward. And I think that Scott Benson is unlikely to ascend to a leadership role in the city council. He is still under investigation, and
the feds is watching.
The feds are watching, and you know what? They probably should be, because when you look at, I'm just saying, when you look at a corporate agenda, the corporate agenda is not just campaign contributions. That corporate agenda happens all during the year.
Correct.
I don't trust our city council to not engage in the kind of relationships, cozy relationships with corporations, whether they cross the line or not, that should not exist. And I think our ethics need to be strengthened so that there is more of a firewall between a lot of these folks.
Yep.
And that's something that both Letitia and ML talked about. So I'm encouraged. People are going to look at the time step on this podcast and be like, what in the world? Listen, if you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. I tried, y'all. I promise I did. But I got Branden, Snyder, and Donna Gibbons-Davis in here. There's no way we can keep it to an hour. So a few shout outs. I want to shout out every single person who actually mustered up the courage and ran for office and actually campaigned and knocked doors, regardless of what your vision was, regardless of what you believed. We need people out there running for office. We need people participating in democracy. Shout out to the poll workers who continue to be, in my opinion, the cornerstone of our democracy, right? The people who volunteer from the early hours of the morning into, you know, at the central counting board that night trying to tally up votes. And I want to shout out everyone who came on our show last week during our live election episode, which was also our anniversary, one of our anniversary episode. No, it wasn't. It was 103.
You know, they think it's one.
Yeah.
Buzzsprout thinks that we had 100, but they're wrong.
Yeah, okay. So Denzel McCampbell, Senator Adam Ollier, Letitia Johnson, Nicole Small, Eda Ford, Comey Young Jr., Tony McElwain, Hakeem, the People's Poet, and our Chief Storytelling Officer, Eric Thomas. Donnie, you got shout outs?
Well, you shouted out many people that I would have shouted out, all of the candidates who won. I would shout out to the 6 city council people who are ascending to that office. I have confidence. All bets are on you. We're going to try to get to know all of you, and hopefully we can get all of you on the show.
Yeah, let's get all the winners on Authentically Detroit.
Let's get all the winners on Authentically Detroit. I want to shout out all those people who voted absentee. People acted like if you were not at the polling place on election day, you didn't vote. I voted 3 weeks before it was due. So, you know, it's not 1985, folks. A lot of us voted from home, and that's why we changed the law so that we could vote from home. I want to shout out to the staff of ECN who hosted the election forum and stayed up late, and they were here all during the day trying to help people with elections. And I want to shout out the people at PACE Southeast Michigan, which is the organization that provides service to many seniors. Comprehensive services is soup to nuts, and they are now taking care of my mother. You have really lessened my anxiety.
Branden, do you have any shout outs?
Yeah, so shout out to y'all. Thank y'all for inviting me. I really appreciate this. And we got another hour and a half in us, I believe. So,
we definitely got a part 2. We love talking about this stuff.
Yes.
Man.
Shout out to, the greatest organizing staff in the city, in the country, in the world, Detroit Action. To our allies like 482 Forward and We the People Michigan and Mothering Justice and Michigan United.
Oh, Mothering Justice. Shout out to Ebony.
Shout out to Ebony and Danielle. Yes, and Aisha. And, shout out to my parents, the Eastsiders, Little Eastsiders 94 and Connors, just up the street. So, and then my girlfriend, Naomi, who puts up with me.
You better
Naomi,
shout out
your girlfriend, Naomi?
You better shout
Cawthorn?
No.
Oh, Lord. Lord, Donna.
I met a Naomi Cawthorn yesterday, and so I didn't know.
Not.
You better shout out your boo on the air.
Naomi,
I'm sorry.
Naomi, the right Naomi. So.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
No worries. And then, last but never least, shout out to my dog Keisha, who I'm getting ready to walk when I get back home.
All right. We thank you all so much for listening, and we want you to catch the wave.